is the extent of the contract lease that we have with our current FPO? For some reason, I was under the impression it was a 5-year contract. Is it through 2032?
Yes, that's the case.
Is there any?
There are opportunities for the city to review the fuel floating fees every 5 years to determine if they're appropriate in line with the market. Well, the lease extends through 2032, as it seems correct.
Do we pay airport board members right now?
Yes, we do. I think it's $50 a meeting, like we do the planning commission.
Does it also cover travel or other expenses?
We just pay them a flat meeting fee is what the council has asked us to do.
And then do you also pay your city council members when they sit on that board?
No.
They're not being paid to sit on that airport advisory board?
No, we don't send you additional funds.
Okay. Okay.
I have some questions. I feel a little bit singled out in your presentation. I just wanted some direct questions. I'm hoping you need some direct answers. Are you suggesting in that presentation any improprietary actions on my behalf or something I've done that would imply I've done something wrong? I'm trying to understand the nature, and maybe I'm connecting dots that aren't really there. But
well, and that's a part of our question. That's the reason the state code says you have to file within 30 days after the election, because so that these questions aren't out there, especially when you're in a deficit campaign. And then the fact that the FBO donated to your campaign. This is why the laws are set up this way, and I don't think it's rocket science where that a lay person would not look at state code and go, I need to file. And I ran for city council. I mean, the person that was in charge of informing us when things were due were great about it. She reminded me when I needed to file. And so I just happened to have that extra perspective of actually running myself. I thanked her for reminding me. So that's why the state code is what it is so that we know what the final filing of anybody's campaign is, is. I mean, so I'm not.
So by filing a document which will be exactly the same, there will be no changes whatsoever in order to satisfy. Are you talking about a post-election filing?
Yeah, within 30 days of the election. Okay,
in doing so, there will be no change whatsoever. I'm not proposing that that's going to necessarily change your point of view necessarily, but will that satisfy that concern? I mean, is there something else that's being implied? Is there an implication?
We're saying the fact that it wasn't disclosed leaves these exact questions left open. That's why we filed this.
That will be addressed. Are there any other questions then?
No, I'm answering yours.
If there's anything else that might be implied because I don't want there to be any questions from yourself or this organization here. I mean, this is an opportunity. If you have concerns or if you have any doubt, let's not imply questions. If you haven't, because I don't want to hear later, through an editorial or through subsequent meetings, yes, there's all kinds of concerns.
We brought up everything we know at this point.
Okay.
And that's the problem with not filing, is it leaves it open for interpretation.
And I can appreciate that. And that was my mistake. There was no change to the document. I assume that would be the same document used since there was no change. Now that's something I'll have to speak with.
Well, and you need to read Heber City Code on when you don't file. So, I mean, that's in the packet.
Okay.
We have a question, Mr.
If we're being invited
Would
to
you guys
ask,
come up and mic address it?
Sure.
Say your name.
I'm Ron Crittenden. I guess my comment is there's several recommendations that I wholeheartedly endorse. And a citizen advisory board seems to me just what's been outlined is for the citizens to advise the council. The council make the final decisions anyway. And I guess in terms of what was Eric's comment, we're saying we don't need city people on the board. Let Mark go and be the liaison like it's outlined, and let citizens, broad-based citizens of the county, two of which aren't, be on the board. And so you're saying, you're worrying about the filing thing, what's the law? File it. Then I guess that addresses that. But what we're saying is that there's 2 members on the board we don't feel are part of the county and shouldn't be on it. There's a councilman that we think ought to be a citizen instead of a councilman. He'll get the advice of the board, the advisory board, when they come and make recommendations, and then he can vote as a city councilman. It seems to be that it's by being on the board, then coming to the city council, the city, he has, you know, the advisory board isn't advising you, one of your councilmen is. It just, the recommendations speak for themselves, and they're different than the way it is now. It's not that you've done anything wrong, but as a group, I guess some of us are saying it's designed a different way, and we'd like to see it be a different way. Certainly to have 2 members that don't qualify on there. Anyone that thinks the fixed-base operator doesn't have a conflict of interest doesn't understand conflict of interest.
From the audience, one more, then we'll ask a question.
My name is Ken McCarthy, and I wanted to have you be able to clear up something, because I've heard a rumor that there was a possibility that you in the past have worked for Nadine. Is that true or not true?
I helped him build his website.
Okay.
This was a number of years ago.
That you were employed by him?
By a contractual basis. And it was disclosed.
Okay, so okay. I was at a meeting where you came and stopped by recently, and you were asked the question, how would you vote if it came out to expand the airport? And you said you could not vote against the expansion of the airport because of safety reasons, which to me seems completely silly to think that the airport would be together if an earthquake shuts down all 3 of the accesses to you. That was the reason that you gave that you couldn't do that. So when I hear that's the reason we have to expand the airport, is to have this valley be safe from an earthquake that's going to shut down the 3 accesses coming into it, and that the planes that already can land here would not be sufficient to supply food and supplies to this valley, and that airport, the bigger airport, would not have big cracks and holes in it from that same earthquake. Then I start wondering, well, why would he say that to us? This really doesn't make very much sense. And then I hear that your campaign was donated to by the operator, and then there was this question of the money, and you have to admit that there is quite a few things that are kind of coming up that make you look a little suspicious. So
I appreciate it.
I don't really know, but I'm just kind of pointing out that you may have some reasons why people would feel a little suspicious of your actions.
Okay, I appreciate that. And as far as just getting going on the record, and I've done this before numerous times, when it comes to the airport expansion, I'm not for it, I'm not against it. What I am for is a discussion, an open discussion involving as many citizens as possible to measure or to weigh the benefits or either way, if the airport expansion is in the best interest of the city or not. That's what I'm for, is the discussion. I have not made a decision. And I've gone on record numerous times on that fact that I have not supported it, nor have I gone against it. Even during the campaign we've had our debate, I gave the same answer. What I am for is an open discussion on it. And I hope you get involved from the public. Regarding campaign contributions, if you look at the contributions for a number of the candidates, you'll notice I wasn't the only one to receive contributions from those associated with the airport. I was only one of a few. But I can see it, I can appreciate where you're putting dots together that don't exist, then I appreciate the opportunity to address that.
Thank you.
This is the last one.
Well, I have a big concern with the airport situation, the airport board, and the constitution of the board being made up of 2 members who don't live in this valley. Only those of us who live here are concerned about the noise level of bigger and bigger aircraft landing and taking off at that airport. And yet, the other concern I have, a big concern, is it seems that we're providing an airport for Park City, and yet one of the board members is from Park City. And so I I really am concerned about, as we go down the road, and it's been brought up, and attempt to change the bylaws, when we have possibly an illegal board trying to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like just for a second ask the council, since the questions come up. Each one of the individual answers, if you could. If you feel like the airport board as it now is constituted, that any members are illegal on their or residency is a requirement for that. Or just state if you feel like that the board is legally constituted and it's operating as it's supposed to according to bylaws. Jeff, any comments on that?
Well, I think that we got a letter from our city attorney and his interpretation of the bylaws. It doesn't specifically state that you have to be a resident of Heber City. I don't know. I prefer that everybody on the board be from Heber City. Well, I prefer the majority of them to be from Heber City. I don't mind so much them being from Wasatch County. But outside of the county, I think that we have to draw a line. But according to our city attorney, that because we have a couple of board members that are living outside of Wasatch County, because the bylaws didn't specifically state that they had to be residents of Wasatch County or Heber City, he didn't think that it was a violation of bylaws. And I'm not an attorney, but I don't really think that we're violating the bylaws necessarily, but I would just as soon see all of the members be either from Heber City or Wasatch County.
Now you feel it's legally constituted then?
That,
Okay.
I'll stand by Mr. Smith.
Albert, how do you feel? Okay. What, Eric?
Thank you, Mayor. This issue has come up before, and based on recommendations given then and in Mr. Smedley's recommendation now, as the bylaws are currently written, there are no residency requirements. And as such, I do believe we have a constituted airport advisory board. Being said, I do believe there's a deficiency in how the bylaws are currently written, in that I do believe there should be residency requirement, and that is why I would support a recommendation to clarify the bylaws so that it does remove this discussion and clearly state residency requirements. But as they currently stand now, I do believe the board is a constituted board.
Well, I'm not an attorney, but if I would have read that when it said in Wasatch County, I would have thought that that meant in Wasatch County. But I understand that our attorney said that that was not in Wasatch County. But I feel like we spent a lot of time talking about it. I was sorry, what?
I believe that
Our attorney
that they're residents of Wasatch.
Right, I'm just saying, maybe if we believe you have to have the word residence, but I would like us to change it because I can't see, I tried to think what would be a public policy interest in having people, maybe 50 or 100 years ago we couldn't get people to do it or didn't have the expertise, but I think there's so many qualified people here that would do a great job. And I think the majority should be from Heber City because that's where the money comes from and that's where the taxpayers are that would have to pay if there's overages. So I definitely think whatever it says or doesn't say, I think we change it so that you have to be a resident of Wasatch County clearly. And that means a resident in terms of voting, primary residence, not the property owner. Secondly, I totally agree. I feel like I think people sometimes have to be in positions where there's a conflict, but for an FBO to be on this, I think it's such a huge conflict. Every single decision could impact his bottom line that I don't see any reason why we would have him on this.
Did you feel the board now is legally constituted?
Well, like I said, I'm not an attorney, and I think if it is fine, we need to change it. I don't know if it's legally constituted. I mean, if I read that, I told you I don't think it was, but I can't say that I know more than the attorney. He knows how those things are written, so I don't know. Oh yeah, I think we can fix it.
Okay, well, if we let the lawyers determine it, we'll be in a battle for the next 20 years. It will cost us millions of dollars. And so I'm not a lawyer, but I help hire them. Okay, Mark? I help hire them. And I just have to go back to some constitutional principles here. I think when the bylaws were originally written, they meant for people in Wasatch County to be on the board. I don't think they recommend people from other counties to be on the board. It comes back to a constitutional principle from the Supreme Court, one man, one vote. One man, one vote. Okay, you vote where you live full-time, that's where you vote, that's where you get your legal representatives from. You know, sure, maybe we like Warren Buffett on the airport board, but we can't just have him come, right? He's got to live here to do it, all right? So to me, even though technically, legally, the bylaws are vague, they're just too vague to say, oh, it can only be Wasatch residents. We need to change the bylaws, as Eric has proposed in the regular meeting, to say Wasatch full-time residents, or, you know, something to that effect, so that we don't ever have to worry about this again in the future. I would agree that most people from Heber City need to be on the board, but it really comes down to that idea that you cannot be a judge in your own case, as Alexander Hamilton said in the Federalist Papers, and it's equal protection under the law, one man, one vote. We cannot have people coming here from other areas voting for our citizens on this board. So technically, legally, the board is legal, technically, legally, but the spirit is, to me, needs to be shown in the change of the bylaws.
The reason why I asked the council that is because later on in a regular meeting, we're going to have that discussion. I'd say have the discussion now, the council has support that the board is now legally constituted as the current bylaws read, so when the opportunity comes, we have a chance to look at those bylaws and put input from that. So, thanks, Mrs. Taylor.
Can I just make one more comment? And some of us just had mentioned this. You know, you do have decisions later on in the regular meeting. What's the big rush? Can we step back, take a look at the advisory board? You have reversionary and non-reversionary leases you are also deciding. Does this all have to be decided tonight? We're asking as citizens that maybe this gets tabled. I don't understand why there's this big rush to do it this evening. That would be our hope, that at least, you know, to take a breath, step back, look this over, and then come back when you're ready to discuss some of those very big issues that you are going to decide tonight on the airport board. So thank you.